Jake Chambers was an ordinary boy haunted by extraordinary dreams. Every night, as he lay in his bed, the darkness would envelop him, and the nightmares would begin. These were not just any nightmares, they were vivid, terrifying, and all too real. They would start with a feeling of dread, a sense that something was terribly wrong. Ever since his father's tragic death, the nightmares had plagued him. The loss had left a gaping hole in his heart, and the dreams seemed to be a cruel reminder of his grief. He would often find himself staring at his father's photograph, tears streaming down his face, wondering why his father had to leave him so soon. In his dreams, he would see visions of a desolate world, a looming black tower, and a man in black with eyes like burning coals. This world was unlike anything he had ever seen, a place of despair and darkness. The black tower stood tall and menacing, a symbol of something far more sinister, and the man in black with his piercing eyes seemed to be the embodiment of evil. His mother, at her wits' end, sought help from doctors and therapists. She was desperate to find a solution, to bring some peace to her son's troubled mind. She would spend hours in consultations hoping that someone, anyone, could help Jake. But the answers she received were always the same. They diagnosed him with post-traumatic stress, a coping mechanism for his grief. But Jake knew better. He knew that these dreams were not just a product of his imagination. They were too real, too vivid. He could feel the heat of the fires, the chill of the wind, and the fear that gripped his heart. These were not mere dreams. They were real. Jake was certain of it. He could sense the urgency, the danger that lurked in the shadows. He knew that he had to do something, but he didn't know what. He felt a sense of responsibility, a need to act. He saw flashes of a gunslinger, a lone warrior in a strange land. This man, Roland, was unlike anyone Jake had ever seen. He was strong, determined, and fearless. He seemed to be on a quest, a mission that was of utmost importance. This man, Roland, fought against the man in black. Their battles were epic, their weapons spitting fire and fury. The clashes were intense, filled with a sense of desperation and urgency. It was a fight between good and evil, a struggle for the very soul of the world. Their battles were epic, their weapons spitting fire and fury. The sound of gunfire echoed through the desolate landscape, a symphony of chaos and destruction. Each shot was a testament to their resolve, their determination to prevail. Jake felt a strange connection to Roland, a sense of shared purpose. It was as if their destinies were intertwined, bound by a common goal. He could feel Roland's strength, his determination, and it gave him hope. He knew that he was not alone in this fight. He tried to explain these visions, to make others understand. He would talk passionately, trying to convey the urgency of the situation. But his words always fell on deaf ears. No one seemed to understand the gravity of what he was saying, but no one believed him. They dismissed it as an overactive imagination, a child's way of processing grief. They would nod sympathetically, but their eyes betrayed their disbelief. It was frustrating, isolating, and it made Jake feel even more alone. They dismissed it as an overactive imagination, a child's way of processing grief. Jake would retreat into his own world, drawing pictures of the Black Tower, the man in black, and Roland. It was his way of coping, of trying to make sense of the chaos in his mind. One night, the nightmares became too real. Jake woke up in a cold sweat, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel a presence in the room, a dark, malevolent force. He knew that something was terribly wrong. The man in black stepped out of the shadows, his eyes burning into Jake's soul. He was more terrifying than Jake had ever imagined. His presence filled the room with a sense of dread, a feeling that something terrible was about to happen. He spoke of a tower that held the universe together, a tower he intended to destroy. His voice was cold, devoid of any emotion. He described the tower as the linchpin of reality, the one thing that kept the universe from unraveling, and he intended to bring it down. And he spoke of children with a special gift, children he intended to use as tools in his evil plan. He described them as keys essential to his scheme. Jake felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the implications. Jake knew instinctively that he was one of those children. It all made sense now. The dreams, the visions, the sense of urgency. He was a part of something much bigger, something that he couldn't fully comprehend. The next day, men in white coats came for him. They arrived at his home, their faces masked with concern. They claimed they were there to help, to take him to a place where he could get better. They seemed kind, but Jake saw through their charade. He could see the truth in their eyes, the hidden malice. They were not there to help him, they were there to take him away, to use him for their own purposes. Their eyes held a glint of something sinister, something inhuman. It was the same look he had seen in his nightmares, the same malevolent gaze. He knew that they were not who they claimed to be. He recognized them from his nightmares, creatures disguised as men, sent by the man in black. They were there to take him away, to use him in their evil plan. He could feel the fear rising in his chest, but he knew he had to stay strong. Jake knew then that he had to escape. He couldn't let them take him. He had to find a way to get away, to find Roland, to stop the man in black. It was his only chance. His nightmares were real, and they were coming for him. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He had to act, and he had to act fast. The fate of the universe depended on it. Panic surged through Jake as the orderlies closed in, their smiles strained, eyes cold and empty. He could feel the weight of their presence, a suffocating blanket of dread that threatened to smother him. Each step they took seemed to echo with a sinister intent, their movements calculated and predatory. They called him son, their voices dripping with false concern. The words felt like poison, seeping into his mind and twisting his thoughts. He knew better than to trust them. Their concern was a mask, a facade hiding their true intentions. The way they looked at him, with those empty eyes, sent shivers down his spine. But Jake saw their true faces, grotesque and inhuman, lurking beneath the surface. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing the monsters that hid behind the guise of humanity. Their features twisted and contorted, transforming into nightmarish visages that haunted his dreams. He could see the malevolence in their eyes, a hunger that could never be sated. These were the creatures from his dreams, the man in black's minions. The man in black, a shadowy figure who commanded these abominations, had been a constant presence in his nightmares. His minions, twisted and deformed, were the embodiment of fear and darkness. They moved with an unnatural grace, their every action a testament to their otherworldly nature. He had to get away. His heart pounded against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silence of the hallway. The sound of his own heartbeat was deafening, a constant reminder of the danger that lurked behind him. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins, fueling his desperate need to escape. He dodged a grasping hand, his small body slipping through their grasp. The orderly's fingers brushed against his skin, cold and clammy, but he managed to evade their clutches. His movements were quick and agile, driven by a primal instinct to survive. He could hear their frustrated growls, a testament to their determination to capture him. Down the sterile corridor he ran, past closed doors and flickering lights. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever, an endless maze designed to trap him. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, creating an atmosphere of dread and uncertainty. Each step he took was a step closer to freedom, but also a step deeper into the unknown. The air crackled with danger, the scent of antiseptic mixed with something ancient and evil. It was a smell that seemed to permeate the very walls of the hospital, a reminder of the malevolent forces at play. The atmosphere was thick with tension, a palpable sense of foreboding that made every breath feel like a struggle. Bursting through a door, Jake found himself in a deserted waiting room. The room was eerily silent, the only sound the echo of his own footsteps. The chairs were empty, a stark contrast to the chaos he had just escaped. It was a brief moment of respite, but he knew it wouldn't last long. He could hear the heavy thud of footsteps approaching, their distorted voices echoing in the sterile space. The sound was a constant reminder of the danger that was closing in on him. The voices were garbled and indistinct, but he could sense the malice behind them. They were getting closer, and he knew he had to keep moving. Desperation clawed at him. There had to be a way out, an escape from this nightmare. His eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of hope. The walls seemed to close in on him, the weight of his fear pressing down on his chest. He couldn't let them catch him. He had to find a way to escape. And then he saw it. A door slightly ajar at the far end of the room, a faint light spilling out from within. It was a beacon of hope, a promise of safety. The light was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile environment of the hospital. It was his only chance, and he knew he had to take it. Hope surged through him. Taking a deep breath, he made a dash for it, his small legs pumping furiously. Every muscle in his body screamed in protest, but he pushed through the pain. The door was so close, just a few more steps and he would be free. He could feel the creatures behind him, their presence a constant threat. He could hear the creatures behind him, their frustrated growls echoing in his ears. They were getting closer, their anger palpable. The sound of their growls sent a chill down his spine, but he didn't dare look back. He had to keep moving, had to reach the door before they caught him. As he reached the door, he threw it open, diving through the opening and into the unknown. The light enveloped him, a comforting embrace that promised safety. He didn't know what lay beyond the door, but anything was better than the nightmare he had just escaped. He took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. The world spun, a dizzying kaleidoscope of light and shadow. It was as if reality itself had been torn apart and reassembled in a chaotic dance of colors and shapes, leaving Jake disoriented and struggling to make sense of his surroundings. Jake stumbled, his senses reeling. The ground beneath his feet felt unstable, as if it might give way at any moment. He reached out trying to steady himself, but there was nothing solid to grasp. His vision blurred, and he blinked rapidly, trying to clear his head. Gone were the sterile walls of the institution, replaced by something alien and strange. The familiar beeping of medical machines and the sterile scent of antiseptic were replaced by an eerie silence and the faint, unsettling smell of decay. The transition was jarring, like stepping from one world into another with no warning. He stood on hard-packed earth, the air thick with the scent of dust and decay. The ground was dry and cracked, as if it hadn't seen rain in years. Each step he took kicked up small clouds of dust that clung to his clothes and filled his lungs with a gritty, unpleasant taste. Above, a crimson sky bled into an endless horizon, casting the landscape in an eerie, otherworldly glow. The sky seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the red hues shifting and changing like the embers of a dying fire. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a constant reminder that he was far from home. He was in his dreams, or perhaps his nightmares. The surreal quality of the landscape, the way everything seemed slightly out of focus, made it feel like he was trapped in a dream he couldn't wake from. But the pain in his chest and the fear in his heart told him this was all too real. He recognized the desolate beauty of this place, the twisted trees, the skeletal remains of buildings reaching for a sky that offered no comfort. The trees were gnarled and twisted, their branches like skeletal fingers clawing at the air. The buildings, or what was left of them, stood as silent sentinels, monuments to a world that had long since crumbled to dust. This was Midworld, the land from his nightmares, a place teetering on the edge of oblivion. It was a world that seemed to exist in a perpetual state of twilight, where the sun never fully rose and the shadows never fully receded. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, as if the very land itself was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. Fear threatened to consume him, but a strange sense of rightness, of destiny, pushed him forward. It was as if some unseen force was guiding him, urging him to keep moving despite the terror that gnawed at his insides. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves, and forced himself to take another step. The air crackled with an unseen energy, a palpable tension that set his teeth on edge. He was not alone. He could sense it. There was a presence here, something watching him from the shadows. He could feel its eyes on him, cold and unblinking, and it sent a shiver down his spine. Drawing strength from a well of courage he didn't know he possessed, Jake pushed onward. Each step was a battle, but he refused to give in to the fear. He clenched his fists, feeling the rough texture of the earth beneath his fingers, and kept moving forward, one foot in front of the other. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger, but he knew he had to find the gunslinger. Roland was his only hope. The thought of the gunslinger gave him strength, a beacon of light in the darkness. He had to find him, no matter what it took. Roland was his only hope. The gunslinger was a figure of legend, a hero from the stories his father used to tell him. If anyone could help him navigate this strange and dangerous world, it was Roland. He had to believe that. As he walked, the world shifted around him, the landscape rearranging itself with each step he took. It was as if the very ground beneath his feet was alive, constantly changing and morphing. One moment he was walking through a barren wasteland, the next he was surrounded by twisted trees and crumbling ruins. This place was alive yet broken, a testament to some ancient, unimaginable power. There was a sense of history here, a feeling that this land had once been something great, something powerful. But now it was a shadow of its former self, a broken, dying world clinging to the last remnants of its glory. And somewhere in this dying world, the man in black was waiting. Jake could feel his presence, a dark, malevolent force lurking just out of sight. The man in black was the source of all his nightmares, the embodiment of everything he feared, but he knew he had to face him, had to confront the darkness if he ever hoped to find the light.